If you're running an established B2B business, but a few years in and you are over reliant on referrals, word of mouth, and networking for new business, struggling to get online marketing to generate consistent leads, then you're stuck at what I call the referral ceiling. What I'm going to talk to you about today is how to address that. Now, obviously, referrals are great. They show you're doing good work, clients that love you and all that, but they're not predictable and they're not scalable. And if you don't have a reliable source of leads that you control, you get stuck in those feast and famine cycles, create stress, holds back growth. Now, I won't promise to 10x your business or anything ridiculous or cliche like that. In fact, our approach is the complete opposite of that. We talk about the foundations, the fundamentals behind successful lead generation, that when you implement them, everything else just works. That's what we're going to get into today. Now, before we dive deeper, who's this for? This specifically is for established B2B businesses. So they've been around for a few years, typically somewhere between 300K and 3 million revenue per year, proven service, happy customers, where the business was built to this level off the back of referrals, networking, word of mouth, typically from the owner. They've got a network, they come into the business, they grow it, that initial momentum gets you so far, but you've never really done online marketing or never really made it work consistently beyond having a website and putting out some content. Maybe you've dipped your toe in a few things, but nothing's stuck, nothing's really worked, and you're tired of that feast and famine cycle and want to find a way out. Now, this isn't for startups, so if you don't have product market fit, this isn't the right training for you. And also, if you've got established systems, if you are making 5-10 million plus, you've got lead generation systems that produce consistently for you, this isn't the right training. But if you're in that dangerous middle ground, successful enough to be comfortable, but not enough to scale, then stick around. Next 20 minutes might make you a bit uncomfortable. There might be some tough things to address here, but they could also save your business from that stagnation. So specifically, you're going to learn 3 things. You're going to learn why 90% of the proven marketing tactics that you hear about online are actually destined to fail. You'll learn why some businesses can effortlessly fly past yourself. Maybe there's other businesses who aren't as good as you. You know they aren't as good, but they seem to have no problem bringing in clients. You don't understand why. And then thirdly, I'll show you the foundational fix that I've used with thousands of business owners to help them escape that feast and famine cycle. So, who am I to promise to get this working for you? Well, my name's Jamie Forrest, and together with my business partner John, we've worked with over 1,500 B2B businesses who were stuck in those feast and famine cycles where growth had stalled. Now, from working closely with that many businesses of all different shapes and sizes and industries, I started to see the patterns. Well, in fact, I started to see one very clear pattern. See, as it turns out, all these businesses, they were struggling with the same issues. So I went back through my notes, I looked back through all the conversations, all the clients, and I counted 7 symptoms that repeated over and over again. And here they are. The first is inconsistent lead flow. So this is going, like as we said, feast to famine, back again. Second is marketing spend. So money poured into expert agencies or freelancers or taking courses that didn't produce anything, didn't get them anywhere, didn't move the needle. Third is invisible content. So putting posts out, maybe it's a LinkedIn, maybe it's Facebook, wherever, and they get a couple of pity likes, no comments, that sort of thing. The fourth is wrong fit leads. So this is wasting hours with tire kickers who are never going to buy. The classic lemonade budget, champagne expectations. The fifth is haggling. Clients haggling over price, where they see you as a commodity to be compared with someone else. The sixth is feeling like you have to push for work all the time rather than people approaching you. And the seventh is overwhelm, not sure where to turn. There's so much noise online. Who do we trust? How do we actually go about building a lead gen system that works? Now, if you recognize 4 or more of those symptoms, the good news is that you're not alone, because as I said, these are symptoms. I've seen them thousands and thousands of the time, but again, having seen them over and over, I realised they aren't separate problems. They're all symptoms of the same underlying condition, the same problem. The real problem is what I call weak marketing foundations. So what do I mean by foundations? Well, it might sound like a cliche, but it holds up. So hear me out. Think of a building. If the foundations aren't solid, nothing you build on top of that is going to stay standing very long. It certainly won't be something you can build a skyscraper on. And that's exactly what happens when businesses rush into tactics, like SEO or content or ads or cold calling, whatever it is, without those strong foundations in place. They don't stand up. So next, I'm going to show you what these critical foundations are, what's needed to fix them, and how to know which you need to work on first. So what are these foundations? I like to keep things simple. I find that in life, as in business, the best solutions almost always come from getting back to basics. So we're going to go right back to our ABCs, except here, this is marketing, so obviously it's an acronym, they have to stand for something. I'll tell you what they are, then I'll explain how to use them. A is for audience. So when your audience sees themselves clearly in your messaging, they resonate with it, they take action. B is brand strategy. Without this authenticity piece, you're just another generic business making generic promises. When you get it right, your clients feel like they found their people, they feel drawn to you. And then C is customer journey. The right offers, presented the right way, at the right time, to the right people, taking them step by step from where they are to where they want to be with your help. And these all work together. Each piece needs to be solid or the whole can't work. And we want to do them in order. So let's get into the details and the how-to. So audience. Most B2B companies dilute their messaging, dilute the potency of it by targeting audiences that are either too broad. You get people saying, any SME with staff, or scattered audiences. So we have these 4 different customer profiles, and neither of these can work because you're either going to end up with bland messaging doesn't speak to anyone, or it's going to be messy and scattered and confusing because you're jumping all over the place. Whereas when you precisely define who you serve, what their specific problems are, your marketing becomes magnetic. There's this great line. When you describe somebody's problem better than they can, they automatically assume you have the solution. And that's the key. If we can paint a picture that our clients see themselves in, and this is where you being an expert comes in because you have the experience, the knowledge, you've worked with these people to really get in and understand what they're going through, and you can explain it in such a way they see themselves in it, they know that you're the person that can help them. And if you've ever done a standard client avatar exercise, maybe you've got a bunch of them gathering digital dust in your downloads folder, well, they're crap. And the reason is they don't go deep enough. They ask you to fill in generic sort of fill in the blanks. They're not going to uncover any real insights. The thing is, this isn't simple work. It's deceptively difficult, especially when you're so close to it. And I think that's a key point. Whenever we work with businesses, they are 90% of the time, there's a fairly, I wouldn't say obvious, but there's a problem that when fixed is going to make everything work. But as the business owner, you're too close to it. It's really hard to see. In fact, I do 15 to 20 coaching calls every month. And typically we spend over half of our time just defining who it is we're speaking to and what we help them with. And you think, well, those are really easy questions. So why does it take so long? It's because most businesses and most clients don't easily fit into this little box with, one perfect customer, one clean problem. Businesses can be messy and it can get complex, more complex over time. And adding that complexity doesn't actually help you. It doesn't help anyone. And getting this right, it requires expertise that most businesses just don't have. And without it, you are left with oversimplified assumptions that miss the complexity of your actual market. And your messaging just falls flat. That was the situation with a client of ours, Danielle Davies. So she runs a growing VA agency, dozens of clients, love her team. But because her work had grown from just Dan doing work as a VA herself, the client definition was a mess, no fault of her own. It had just grown organically, but it ended up in a situation where she wasn't entirely sure who she should be targeting. When we dug into it on our audit, we defined exactly who she really should be targeting, and just as importantly, who she shouldn't. Here's what she said about it, and the last line's the bit I love. It's been an incredible experience to give me clear direction on how to improve my marketing and increase leads. Now, B, brand strategy. Second foundation, This isn't about logos or colours. In fact, it's an opinion that will get a lot of hate on LinkedIn. Until you're at a stage where you're making comfortably 7 figures, branding in terms of style sheets and logos doesn't matter at all. What does matter is clarity and differentiation. So let me ask you this. If I were to line you up with 5 of your competitors, could a potential client immediately spot why they should choose you instead of them? If not, you have a brand strategy problem. Most businesses struggle with 2 issues here. The first is they sound like everyone else in their industry. They use the same jargon, they say the same technical terms, they just make the same bland noises. Or 2, they play it safe. They don't stand for anything or against anything, and therefore there's no connection. No one feels drawn to them because they're just vanilla. And I don't like that because I think vanilla is great, but that's the term. And when that happens, prospects, they can't differentiate between you and the competition. So what happens, they default to comparing on price because they've got nothing else to go on. And so you get treated like a commodity, and that's when you get people haggling over price. Now with this, the fix isn't actually complicated, but it's also not easy because it calls for a lot of introspection. What you need to uncover is your genuine value proposition, which honestly often isn't what you think it is, and the authentic voice that reflects you, your brand, your personality. And now typically we work with a lot of businesses where the owner is the frontman and the face of it, the sort of personal brand. And your authentic voice is something that can be a bit overdone, but you still need to know where you stand, what you stand for, what you stand against, and the clear position you take in your market. It's one of those things that's often hard to do for yourself because, again, you're too close to it, but a lot easier when you've got an objective outsider who doesn't actually know every inch of the business like you do and isn't afraid to call you out if needed. So, client story. I had a cybersecurity business owner, and you might not know much about cybersecurity, but let me tell you, it's not an easy business to market. Not only is it full of jargon, but it's one of those things that nobody cares about until it's too late, which makes it a challenge to sell because you're not really solving a pressing problem. There's no pain point until it's too late for them to hire you. So I was coaching this business owner and telling them there's nothing wrong with what you're saying, what you're putting out there. It's a bit boring. We need something else. So we dug into it, and over the course of going back and forth, we found out that the owner he used to be a hacker himself. And you just think, well, how much more interesting is that? So we went from, the 16-step cyber security review that will show you how much risk, blah, 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 blah. We changed that to ex-hacker reveals the 16 easiest ways to break into your system and steal your client data. Now, of course, not everyone has a cool backstory like that. We can't all be some sort of Hollywood movie. But I guarantee there's something that makes you different. And I mean that. I stand by that. Every single time. If you are an expert, if you are genuinely great at what you do, there's always an angle to find, even if you may not believe me. And when your brand strategy is clear, you don't need to push for work. The right clients are drawn for you. You get people saying things like, "Oh, I've seen your stuff," or "I've been wanting to do this," or "I've been following you for a while," because they feel drawn for you because there's a connection. And this isn't theory either. McKinsey research showed that B2B companies with strong brand strategies outperform weak by 20% financially and actually command 13% price premium on average. So not only do you get more leads, but you can charge more for them. Then all you need to do is make them a series of great offers. And so that brings us to step 3, customer journey. So the third foundation is customer journey. And again, data backs this up. Forrester's research, not me, there's a research company called Forrester's. They found that B2B companies with properly mapped customer journeys achieve 27% faster profit growth over a 3-year period. That's the difference between struggling at 500k and getting over 2 million or more. Now, there's 2 points to this. There's 2 areas. Both of them are really common. And I think really easy places for businesses to drop the ball. The first is what I call hope marketing. So this is where businesses create content hoping someone will just book a sales call, or they run ads just direct to a booking page. And the reality is your ideal clients are on a journey, jumping from a random bit of content to your sales page and being like, yeah, let's do it. It's the equivalent of going from let's get a coffee to let's go to 2 weeks in Mallorca. It's not quite that cliche of proposing marriage on the first date, but it's still too much. A proper customer journey acknowledges exactly where they are, where they're starting, where they are in that buyer's journey. Are they just becoming aware of the problem? Are they learning how to solve it? Do they even realize they have a problem? If not, you need to speak to them in a different way. Maybe they're evaluating different solutions. Maybe they're ready to make a decision and just looking for the best deal out there. When this foundation breaks, you see really painful symptoms. So you see content that gets likes, but they never turn into leads. You see prospects who ghost you after initially showing interest. And you get expensive leads who never convert. It's a really frustrating thing and often really hard to see what's going wrong for the business owner. Now, the second cock-up is the offer problem. And this might be the biggest mistake I see in all B2B marketing, is your offers. Most B2B businesses are putting out what I call a non-offer into the marketplace. So you know what a non-offer looks like. It's sort of book a call to learn more, or contact us for info, or schedule a free consultation, or my favorite, we do X, we do taxes, or we do cybersecurity. It tells you nothing. They're not offers. They're sort of requests for prospects' time, but with maybe no suggestion of value in return, and they completely ignore where your customer is in that customer journey. Think about it from their perspective. So you want me to book a call with you, take 30 minutes of my time to speak to a salesperson who I don't know about a service that I don't even know if I need, with no clear idea of what I'll get out of it besides a sales pitch. Doesn't sound very appetizing. And there's no wonder that the conversion rates on those hover around sort of 1% at best. The businesses that consistently generate leads online, they know their offer needs to do 3 things. It needs to match their customers' awareness level, so where they are in that buying cycle, whether they're just becoming aware of the problem, whether they're looking at potential other solutions, whether they're comparing you or not, where they're at. It needs to provide a specific outcome. And this is incredibly rare, bizarrely. We're not talking about like insights or strategy, but an actual deliverable that they can visualize, and also that they see the value in. It's going to help them get towards their goal, whatever that goal is. And then the third thing is it needs to make a no-brainer offer. So the value to effort ratio should be so obviously in their favor that it feels almost stupid to say no. So a quick client story on this one. We did an audit for a client called Sue. Now, Sue's an executive coach for HR leaders. She's a real expert. She delivers great results for clients, but her offering was this sort of set of services that didn't quite fit together, didn't make sense together, and it created confusion with potential clients. And she couldn't quite figure out how to straighten it all out. After we worked there, after we studied the customer journey, we studied the audience, we were able to put things together in this way that makes a lot of sense. And here's the bit that Sue said that I really love. I knew my messaging wasn't quite right. I needed more streamlined lead generation process, but I wasn't sure how to fix it. And then the end bit, instead of overwhelming people with multiple programs, I can focus on what really matters. Giving me a clear direction for streamlining my approach made a real difference to my business. And that thing of clarity, both for yourself and for the client, is a huge differentiator. So those are the marketing foundations that you need in place to be able to generate consistent leads online. What I want to do now is go back to those 7 symptoms I mentioned earlier, and you might now understand why each of them exists. So let's have a look. Inconsistent lead flow. Well, when your foundations are solid, you speak to the right people at the right time with the right words, and it brings in consistent, predictable results. Second one, marketing spend isn't translating to results. Well, hopefully now you can see that tactics without foundations, it's just throwing money into a black hole. It's never going to work. It can't work. Content that gets ignored. Well, when you understand your audience deeply and you take a stand, you have a position on things yourself, that authenticity shines through, content resonates, people feel connected with you. Number 4, those wrong fit leads. With clear audience definition and brand positioning, you're naturally going to filter out the wrong client and filter in the right clients. And likewise, with clients haggling over price, when your brand strategy communicates your unique value and your offer is unique, price becomes sedentary. It's not part of the conversation, not really. Always having to push for work. So if you've got a customer journey of no-brainer offers, what it does is it creates a natural pull, guiding people along, drawing prospects to you rather than you having to chase. They feel like they're just naturally going down this path and it makes sense to them. And then finally, overwhelmed, that feeling of not sure where to start. Now, hopefully from going through this, you should have a bit of clear direction. You know that focus on the foundations first, get those solid, and then move on to the next step, the appropriate next step for you and your business. Because remember, 90% of businesses are struggling because they're missing one of these three foundations. And so fixing these three automatically elevates you above the 90%. And that's exactly what happens with our clients after working with us. They typically see a reduction in marketing costs, they see an increase in lead quality and conversion rate on their offers, they have shorter sales cycles, and most importantly, predictable, consistent leads that actually fuel growth to their business. And typically they see those within 60 to 90 days of fixing the problems, of fixing those foundations, because these aren't pie in the sky outcomes. It's simply the natural result of building the right foundations and then creating offers that actually match where your customer is, who they are, what they want. And it's just a very step-by-step process. So the question is, where do you go from here? Well, if you're thinking, yes, okay, I see the issue, I see these foundations need to be fixed, I can see there's issues here that I've been going wrong with, then I have a clear next step for you. Yes, following my own advice by making this hopefully a no-brainer offer for you that delivers clear value rather than just a vague, if you're interested, book a call. So we've developed what we call a marketing foundations audit, the same one that Sue and Danielle went through. It's specifically for B2B businesses, specifically in that 300k to £3 million range, who are over reliant on referrals, networking, word of mouth for business, and want to break through. In this audit, we will analyze your current audience definition. It's a 90-minute session where we deep dive into the audience, into the brand strategy, and into that customer journey, and we identify exactly where the gaps are, where the weaknesses are, both on all three of the foundations, and also your existing offers, your conversion points. And then what we give you is a prioritized roadmap for fixing those gaps and specific actionable steps that you can implement immediately. You walk away with a clear diagnostic plan of exactly what the problems are, exactly how to fix them, whether you implement it yourself or get someone like us to help it. And we back this up with a 100% money back guarantee. If you don't think that the audit was comfortably worth more than you paid for it, then we'll refund your money straight away. But probably won't happen, because it hasn't happened yet, because this isn't generic advice. This is based on fundamentals, and it's completely 100% bespoke. We don't copy and paste this. This is deep work, the hard work that is worth getting right, and it's what I think we are very, very good at. So if you're interested in booking an audit, simply find a link in the description below. Follow that link, choose a date you want, and John or I will be in touch to make sure we are a good fit and we can help you. All the best for now. Take care.